Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Rachel Bussman, and I'm a clinical psychologist at the Child Mind Institute. We're a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources, all online and accessible to everyone. You can learn more about the resources that we have available for families during the coronavirus crisis, including telehealth evaluations, treatment, and you can visit our website at childmind.org/coronavirus. Today, I'd like to talk to you about parenting in the time of coronavirus crisis, and specifically, I'd like to provide some information for single parents. Post your questions in the feed. We're going to be taking those questions as you post them live. And as always, we are putting resources into the feed as we get it, and also we'll be posting the recorded version of this Facebook Live later so that you can view it or share it with a friend or loved one. Remember, we're here every day at 10 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But if you're not able to watch us live, you can absolutely tune in to us later. So I'm looking forward to getting started now. So I think the first thing I'm going to say, so again, we're lucky that we have some questions being posted to us even before the webinar starts. And so one of the first questions is really kind of a basic question that says, I'm parenting on my own. How do I even get started? This whole situation just feels really overwhelming. And so what I would say is the same thing that we've been saying for some of all of really our coronavirus Facebook lives, is that it is really incredibly hard. And just starting from a place of validation is really the first step. Sorry, a little technical glitch there, and I apologize. So really starting from a place of validation is really important. So for example, if you're parenting on your own, whether that means in your home alone and you are the only caregiver, or your caregiver cannot be there because you're not living in the same home, or they're a frontline worker, or whatever the case may be, you might be seeing posts about clean out your closets, or now's the time for some spring cleaning. And you might be thinking a lot of things that I probably won't say right on this live feed, but you might be thinking that is not at all anything I'm thinking about right now. And if you're like me and other people, when you hear about things and tips and strategies, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, is that really what I should be doing? Like, I'm not even remotely close to doing that. So I think the first place is to start from a place of validation. And it might mean, if you're on your own, starting by validating yourself, by actually saying, and maybe even out loud, this is really hard. I'm literally doing the best I can right now in this moment, and that is enough, because actually we're very much in what we're calling survival mode, which means you're trying to just get through the moment without making it worse. And sometimes that means saying, where are the tasks that absolutely need to get done today, and where are the tasks that are very much not on my plate, not even in the realm of what I'm thinking about right now. So that's the first thing, is to validate yourself and say, this is incredibly challenging and incredibly hard, and my situation is unique and maybe not so unique. The second thing to say would be, where to start, I think, is find your village. And so this is something that if you've tuned in and you've listened to me already, you might say, man, this woman talks about your village a lot. What in the heck does she mean? But really, defining your village very much is going to help you, no matter what the circumstance. But when we're speaking specifically about parenting on your own, finding your village is huge. So what we know actually about the research about recovering from traumatic and stressful situations is that your social supports are actually very, very protective. And so whether you have someone in your home isn't what I mean by a village, but your village could be someone in your child's school. Your village could be a friend that you have living in a different city. Your friend could be your extended family who aren't there with you. But that village, and defining that village and knowing who those people are and reaching out to them, is really, really crucial and really important. So that can feel really hard. And I think it also can feel hard because it's sometimes hard to ask for help, especially when we don't know what help we even need, right? So I know that a lot of times I've been encouraged that when you're in a stressful situation, if you're trying to help, just saying, this is what I'm going to do for you can be helpful, because when someone's really under stress, they don't always know what they need. However, reaching out to your village and your network, once you've defined it, is going to be a great sort of first step, right? And there are naturally villages for everyone. And it may be, and I would definitely recommend having a village that consists of more than just one person or type of people, right? So you might reach out to your church or synagogue, because certainly those establishments are going to be great sources of support, comfort, and possibly actually assistance, whether it's dropping a meal off for you or just offering some time to talk or to have someone speak with your children. Similarly, school is an amazing village, right? Every school is sort of managing remote learning differently, but I do think that this kind of gets into one of the questions we've had about how to be at home and help your children with e-learning, right? There are a lot of demands placed on the e-learning experience. And, many parents are sharing with us, and we've had some questions already about parenting when you're on your own and managing all of the e-learning responsibilities. And so it might be that feeling like homeschooling or working with your child 5 days a week is just way too much. And the truth is, there's a lot of flexibility right now. And so there's so many things that are unknown. And again, if you as a parent or caregiver reach out to your school and say, I'm doing this on my own and this is really hard, I'm able to work with my child for X minutes a day, but not Y, or 3 days a week, but not 5. While I think that taking that leap could be quite challenging and really scary, at the same time, I know from our conversations with other families that other families are saying very similar things. And so it might be that right now you are able to dedicate X amount of minutes to your child, and that is what you can do, and that is enough. And again, I'm just going to remind folks that they can absolutely type in questions at any point, and I'm going to be getting those questions and answering them. Similarly, we talked earlier in the week about grandparents and other caregivers, and this is a nice time to just loop that back in, right? So maybe you're parenting on your own in one city or town, and you have a parent or an uncle or a great Aunt Susie, and she would love to help, but she's in another town. Take that opportunity as best you can. So schedule some FaceTime or video or phone call dates with grandma or grandpa, or even your child's favorite babysitter, and utilize that time as time to yourself. Of course, there's a caveat here, right? If you have an infant or you have a toddler, that might not be the way that you utilize virtual visits with the grandparents or caregivers. But for kids, even around the age of 5, they can be engaged in a story time, a virtual visit, any kind of activity. And that could be time where you as a parent go and take a shower, wash some dishes, heat up some food. And that really could be some very needed time. And again, depending on the age of the child, it might actually be a time that you can get more done. It might be getting 5 minutes of sort of a stretch or eating some food yourself. Like, all of those things are actually quite important. I was also reading about that virtual babysitting has gone up hundreds of %, not surprisingly. So for those who are familiar with Sitter City or Care, those are web-based resources to find babysitters or pet sitters or elder care. And not surprisingly, some of those services are absolutely available virtually. Again, this is not a proxy for maintaining your child's safety in the home. However, babysitters or, again, grandparents or other loved ones might be able to help your child with a schoolwork assignment, might be able to just do some playtime. And actually, I think a lot of people, especially extended families, might feel very useful knowing that there is something very specific that they can do to be helpful. So I think that's something to keep in mind. And if you didn't catch that, we'll put Sitter City and care.com in there in our feed so that you'll have that available. Another question that I think that came up for us was, my child is 5 and has ADHD and gets really tired with activities really fast. Do you have any tips for non-screen time activities that are going to sustain his or her attention? So I think that is a really fabulous question. And what we're talking about is relates to young children, right, whose attention is just naturally not going to be as sustained as an older child. And then we're talking about the very real situation that happens when children with ADHD or difficulties with attention and impulsivity can absolutely take its toll. A couple of things that come to mind involve things with high levels of activity or movement. So this would certainly be challenging for me if I didn't love a mess, but things like water play or a spray bottle in the bathtub or chalk outside or bubbles or even just a quick movement break, those are things that can definitely be helpful for kids who have a high energy level or have difficulty sustaining their attention from task to task. Similarly, if you have a child who has some difficulties with their attention, reaching out to school to give you some creative ideas, because let's face it, if you're parenting on your own, you don't have a lot of time to go and find activities and download those activities, right? So we've gotten comments before, please give us resources rather than send us to Pinterest. And so you could reach out to your school and say, I would love a few activities. Could you get an OT at school to send us some really good activities to move the body? So Play-Doh, playing even some really easy crafts that involve like flour and water or mixing things are going to be great. So those are just a few ideas and activities. For older kids, maybe something that's a little more self-directed, really appealing to the tween or teen's interest and finding out if they're interested in a particular area or activity that they can get into, like a craft or a hobby. Another thing that has come up, we're getting a question that's really good, so I'm going to answer that one. So just another question about ADHD and also a medical diagnosis. And so when you have any kind of mental health disorder and a medical diagnosis like diabetes, that can be equally challenging. And this person notes that he's been really emotional and angry and maybe even depressed. He's an outdoor kind of boy. Any suggestions? So first of all, thank you so much for sending that question. I think it is super challenging when you have a child who has a lot of impulsive behavior and is also exhibiting some emotionality or anger or depression. So I'm going to kind of tackle the question in a couple of ways. One is that I've been hearing a lot that there's really a variability in mood and behavior and sort of irritability and kind of overall crankiness that kids are exhibiting. And it's both important to watch that with some attention, right? And also know that some minor fluctuations from day to day are to be expected, right? So for a child with diabetes, if they're irritable or angry or seeming sad or off, you absolutely want to check his or her insulin level and make sure that it's not related to anything medical. You might want to call the pediatrician or the endocrinologist and get a telehealth appointment to just check in, right? Because kids with medical diagnoses can be a bit more fragile, right? And if they're immunocompromised and not able to go outside, that is really, really hard. For kids in general who might be having more persistent mood changes or emotionality or sort of these irritable moments, definitely mental health providers like us at the Child Mind Institute and certainly others are available for telehealth appointments, whether it's an evaluation for short-term treatment or for longer-term treatment, or if you have a therapist, connecting with them and asking them to please be available is really a great idea. In terms of what to do if you can't go outside and your kid is a really outdoorsy kind of kid, looking on, again, going to screens can actually be really helpful. So I have looked on YouTube for like gym activities for kids who are home, right? coach, now I can't remember the coach's name, but Coach Cole, I want to say, if you Google, inside PE activities for kids, climbing with very little space. So my son actually does a ninja class, and the gym he goes to is huge. I mean, I'm very bad at square footage, but it's big. And they told us to set it up this big grid with 3x3 squares outside. And we can't do that for a variety of reasons, including the iPad overheats outside, so we can't watch. So we actually set it up in a much smaller space and made the squares smaller. But then the coach led the kids through, grit ninja bingo, where you put your foot in one square and you put your hand in another. You don't actually need to be led through that. You could do that yourself. You could even put tape on the floor, or even use a little bit of chalk, or just some little stickers on the floor and say, all right, we're going to play body twister, and just come up with, put your hand here, do 5 jumping jacks. Another activity, and then I'll take another question that our school sent, was take a deck of cards, and you can assign that if you get a certain suit, you do a certain physical activity. So hearts are going to be jumping jacks, and spades are going to be mountain climbers, and sit-ups are going to be clubs, and then the number you get is the number you do, and you've got to assign those Jack, Queen, King. But that's something you can absolutely do with your child at home. Another question that came up, which I think is really important, and I want to bring up, is my teenager has mild autism and is angry with me because he can't take the train to see his dad. So in this situation, the child has visitation with dad, and for a lot of reasons can't do that. He can't take the train, and I'm not sure if he can't go see dad at all, but he definitely can't take the train. And for some kids who have autism, changing a routine, well, for many, if not most kids with autism, changing a routine can be very, very distressing. And so even though we've explained it to him, dad and I have both explained it to him, he's still really upset. He's still really having a hard time. So the first thing I would say is, absolutely, there are going to be situations where the current routine is different than the usual routine. And things around visitation might absolutely be something that is flexed and something that stays the same. And so for kids who have autism, sometimes a social story can be really, really helpful. And what a social story is really just a picture book, so to speak, a picture book with words that explains what is happening right now and sort of what to expect right now. So while I haven't written a social story for this situation, it might be something like, right now, we need to stay inside because of something called coronavirus. Coronavirus is an illness and you'd have maybe a page or two on that. Usually I take the train on Tuesday afternoon to visit dad. I really love taking the train. This is what happens, and that's what happens. Right now, I can't take the train, and that's really frustrating. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to be calling dad. We might even watch a video of the train coming and going, if particularly riding the train is something that's part of that particular child's repertoire of comfort. And then the social story would also explain what is going to happen. And then the idea that when this is over, we'll go back to taking the train over to dad, right? The other thing I think I would point out is that sometimes for children with autism or anxiety, or even just kids in general, sometimes don't like what we tell them, and it's really distressing to them. And our inclination might be to give a lot more explanation and try to rationalize why this is a situation that we need to be patient with, or have a little bit more empathy, or things like that. And that often isn't super helpful in a moment of high anxiety, right? So for a child that's really distressed, helping them calm down in the moment and giving really brief instructions and just kind of actually the same kind of information is going to be really helpful. So there are definitely ways, if you Google social stories for certain things, that is something you probably can find. We've created some social stories around other sort of situations, and we can get that on our website as well. So that is a really, really fabulous question. We have a little bit more time for just a few more questions. One question that came up was, I'm really actually having a hard time managing all of this. I'm feeling really stressed out. I'm feeling like a bad parent, and I just need some strategies to stay calm. So first of all, I would say, and again, it sounds like a broken record a little bit, and at the same time, I think it's helpful to remember that you're not a bad parent, that this is a really stressful situation. And if you're saying, I'm noticing I'm getting angry, or I need some strategies to stay calm, you're probably ahead of the curve in noticing that you're having some emotions, maybe sometimes big emotions. And that is really the first step. So the first step is noticing you have those emotions. The second thing is to be a bit compassionate with yourself when you're having those emotions. But then let's not downplay the fact that sometimes if you're noticing that your emotions are getting the best of you, and let's say you're losing your temper or you're yelling more than you want to, that's a signal to reach out to your village, to a therapist, to a teacher, to that neighbor that said, hey, can I do anything to help you? And you maybe said, no, not really. Reaching out and saying, hey, yeah, actually, I love that lasagna you were talking about. Sounds amazing. Thank you so much. It's really actually hard to accept help, but actually accepting help is probably one of the best things we can do right now. And again, everything goes around and comes around. So you accepting help right now means what it means today, and another time you'll help someone else. And so really everybody has very unique situations, and being able to say, I can accept help. Another thing to do in terms of staying calm is this idea that's come up a couple times with questions to us around screen time. So I've actually fielded a lot of questions recently about feeling guilty about putting a screen on. And I've been impressed, and also, impressed that people are asking the question, but also want to make sure that everybody knows it's okay to loosen the reins a little bit. So if you're feeling not calm, or you're feeling really stressed, and you're trying to balance working from home and managing all of the different tasks, letting your children watch a show or saying the next 30 minutes, I don't really have the bandwidth right now, that it would be one of those times to say, I'm going to use a distraction tool that's fine for my kids and is not doing any harm. So that's different than saying, rules are out the window, we're just going to use screens all the time. But again, the idea of putting an oxygen mask on before your child is really important here, that if you're not taking care of your own needs, it's going to be very hard to take care of your children's. So making sure you're hydrated, eating, and taking a shower. One last thing before it's time to go, because we didn't actually talk about working from home, but if you are working from home, you're probably working for someone who's also working from home. So I think we're all sort of working from home. And so if you have questions about how to shift some of the tasks you have for work, or switch the shift that you work or the hours that you work, having a conversation with HR, considering taking family leave, or even just having a conversation with your boss can be really helpful. I know, I have had many conversations and have been part of conversations where everybody is working from home or managing some level of multiple roles. And so it is really okay to have those conversations. So I hope that I want to thank everyone for joining and for the really thoughtful questions that have been posed. I hope that this was helpful. Remember, we're here every day at 10 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we look through all of your questions daily. Please check the post for the topics that will be upcoming. The Child Mind Institute is here to help with the mental health and parenting needs during this crisis, no matter where you are. We have resources to help, including daily tips and consultations to gold standard telehealth treatments. Go to childmind.org/coronavirus. Please be safe, and thank you.